The college campus sprawls under a gray afternoon sky, its manicured lawns and brick buildings humming with the chatter of students rushing between classes, but near the edge of a quiet path, a knot of white frat boys circles Amir Tyson, their laughter sharp and cruel as they shove him toward a muddy ditch, his sneakers slipping on the wet grass while his backpack tumbles from his shoulder, books spilling into the muck. Amir, slight, studious, his dark eyes wide with a mix of fear and defiance, stumbles, his hands clawing at the ground as the leader, a broad-shouldered kid with a smug grin, kicks dirt onto his jacket and sneers, "Crawl back where you came from." The words laced with venom that draws snickers from the others, their voices overlapping in a chorus of taunts, their faces alight with the thrill of power. A crowd gathers, some whispering, others filming with shaky phones, but no one steps in, not until a shadow falls across the scene, heavy and unyielding, and Mike Tyson strides forward, his boots pounding the earth, his massive frame cutting through the onlookers like a blade through silk. His eyes, those same eyes that stared down champions, lock onto the frat boys, his jaw tight, his fists clenched at his sides as he closes the distance, his presence a thunderclap that hushes the air. The leader turns, still grinning, oblivious, until Mike's voice booms, low and lethal, "You picked the wrong kid." And in a flash, he grabs the kid's collar, yanking him off his feet, the smugness draining from his face as it twists into shock, his buddies freezing mid-laugh, their mouths gaping as they realize who stands before them. Amir scrambles up, mud streaking his clothes, his breath ragged, but his gaze lifts to his father with a flicker of relief, while the crowd's murmurs swell into gasps, phones tilting to capture the moment Mike looms over the bullies, his grip unrelenting, his voice a growl that promises lessons they'll carry like scars. "You're done here." The scene hangs there, electric and raw, a father's wrath unleashed, and a voice cuts through. They thought they could break his son with hate, but they didn't know Mike Tyson was watching, ready to strike. Mike Tyson sits heavy in the worn leather armchair of his living room, the hum of a muted TV casting a faint glow across the hardwood floor, his massive hands resting on his knees, fingers drumming a slow, restless beat as he watches his son Amir slouch on the couch, a plate of untouched chicken and rice cooling on the coffee table between them. The house smells of cumin and garlic, a meal Mike cooked himself, hoping to coax a smile from the boy who's always loved his father's kitchen experiments, but tonight Amir barely glances at it, his lean frame curled inward, his dark eyes fixed on the flickering screen though they see nothing, his fork lying idle beside the plate, a stillness that gnaws at Mike's gut like a dull blade. Amir's been like this for weeks now, a quiet drift pulling him away from the life he used to leap into, no more shadowboxing in the garage where Mike taught him jabs and hooks, his gloves gathering dust on a shelf, no more late-night debates about basketball stats or college plans, his voice replaced by shrugs and mumbles, even the weekend hikes they'd take through the hills behind their house, Amir's laughter echoing off the rocks, have faded into memory, replaced by this hollow absence that Mike can't name but feels in his bones. He leans forward, his voice soft but rough-edged, "Hey, champ, what's eating you? You ain't been yourself," his words carrying the weight of a man who's fought through shadows and knows their shape too well, but Amir just shifts, tugging his hoodie tighter around his shoulders, muttering, "I'm fine, Dad," though the crack in his tone betrays him, a fragile thread Mike tugs at gently, unwilling to let it snap. He tries again over breakfast the next morning, pouring orange juice into Amir's glass. "You skipping training again? Thought you wanted to spar with me," his tone light but probing, his eyes searching the boy's face for a flicker of the fire he's always seen there, but Amir pushes his eggs around the plate, his head low. "Just tired," he says, and Mike's chest tightens. He knows tired doesn't look like this, doesn't feel like this, not in a kid who used to bounce through life with a grin that could melt steel. Memories flood back unbidden, Mike at 10, ducking racial taunts in Brownsville, fists balled tight as kids circled him with jeers, his own silence a shield until he learned to swing back. He sees that same quiet in Amir now, that same retreat, and it stirs a fierce ache, a father's instinct sharpened by a past he'd vowed his son would never relive. Talk to me, man, I ain't letting this slide, he presses one evening, sitting beside Amir on the couch, his hand resting on the boy's shoulder, firm but warm, and Amir's eyes flicker, a storm behind them, but he shakes his head. It's nothing, Dad, really, though his voice wavers, and Mike knows it's a lie. He's seen pain before, worn it, fought it, and he'll be damned if he lets it swallow his son whole. Amir's world comes into focus then, a freshman at the local college, a quiet kid with a sharp mind, dreaming of engineering, his backpack stuffed with textbooks on bridges and circuits, his nights spent sketching designs in a spiral notebook under the dim glow of a desk lamp. He's not loud like his father, not built for the spotlight, but there's a strength in him, a steady resolve that Mike's always admired. A boy who'd rather build than break, who'd rather listen than shout, yet that strength seems to buckle now, folding under a weight Mike can't see but feels pressing down. He watches Amir shuffle out the door each morning, shoulders hunched under his hoodie, his steps slower than they used to be, and the sight twists something deep in Mike's core, a fire lighting, a promise hardening. Whatever's dimming his son's spark, he'll find it, he'll fix it, because Amir's more than his blood, he's his heart, and no one gets to take that light away. Across the room, the TV drones on, a basketball game neither of them watches, and a voice rises above it. Mike Tyson knew pain, but seeing it in his son lit a fire he couldn't ignore, a quiet vow threading through the stillness, a father's love poised to roar against whatever shadows dare to creep too close. Mike Tyson eases his pickup truck through the college campus gates, the engine's low rumble a steady pulse beneath the chatter of students spilling across the sunlit quad, his hands gripping the wheel as he glances at Amir slouched in the passenger seat, the boy's hoodie pulled low over his eyes, his backpack clutched tight against his chest like a shield. The air smells of cut grass and coffee from a nearby kiosk, a crisp morning breeze tugging at the leaves overhead, but there's a heaviness in the cab that Mike can't shake, Amir's silence, his hunched shoulders, the way he stares out the window without seeing, a shadow of the kid who'd once chatter about class projects or crack jokes about Mike's old fight stories. As they roll to a stop near the engineering building, Mike's gaze drifts past Amir to a cluster of white frat boys lounging on the steps, their polos crisp and their laughter loud, a pack of broad-shouldered kids with smirks that twist as they lock eyes on Amir stepping out of the truck, their heads tilt, their murmurs sharpen, and Mike catches it, the glint of something mean in their stares, a flicker of disdain that prickles the back of his neck. But he says nothing, just nods at Amir. You good, champ? And Amir mumbles, yeah, Dad, before trudging off, his sneakers scuffing the pavement, his frame shrinking under their scrutiny. Mike lingers, truck idling, watching his son disappear into the crowd, those frat boys still tracking him, their smirks widening into something uglier, a silent promise that sets Mike's jaw tight. He pulls away, but the image sticks, a splinter under his skin he can't ignore. Later that week, he comes back unannounced, parking out of sight behind a row of oaks, his boots quiet on the grass as he moves closer to the quad, a father's instinct pulling him like a tether. He needs to see, needs to know. There's Amir, alone near a stone bench, his nose buried in a textbook, pencils spilling from his unzipped bag, his focus a fragile bubble in the afternoon bustle. Then the frat boys appear, sauntering over like wolves scenting blood, their laughter cutting through the hum of campus life, sharp and deliberate. The leader, tall, blond, his polo stretched tight over a gym-built chest, leans in first, snatching the book from Amir's hands, flipping it upside down with a sneer. What's this, nerd shit? And the others crowd around, their voices rising in a taunting chorus as they mock his faded hoodie, his scuffed sneakers. You dress like you're still in the hood. Each jab a dart aimed to sting. Amir freezes, his hands clutching the straps of his bag, his eyes darting for an escape, but they block him, their circle tightening. The lanky one with a buzz cut shoves him, a quick push that sends his pencils scattering, and the leader leans closer, his voice dropping to a venomous hiss. You don't belong here, boy, go back where you fit. The racial slur landing like a punch, raw and unmasked, drawing snickers from the pack as they shove him again, harder this time, his books tumbling to the grass. Amir stumbles, his shoulders hunching, his fists balling at his sides but staying there, too timid to swing back, too quiet to shout, his face a mask of shame and restraint as he bends to gather his things, their laughter swelling over him like a wave. Mike watches from the trees, his breath catching, his fists clenching until his knuckles ache, every slur a hammer blow to his chest. He knows this game, lived it, fought it, the same hate that dogged him as a kid now clawing at his son, and it lights a fury in him that burns cold and deep. The frat boys strut off, tossing Amir's pencil case into a bush, their swagger unbroken, their voices fading into the campus din, leaving Amir kneeling in the dirt, his hands trembling as he picks up his scattered notes. Mike stays hidden, his heart pounding, his mind racing, those smirks, that cruelty, they think Amir's alone, think he's weak, but they don't see the shadow stretching behind him, a father's presence coiled and waiting, and a voice threads through the silence. They saw an easy target in Amir, unaware his father's shadow loomed close, ready to teach them the cost of their hate. The college campus hums with its usual rhythm, students weaving through sun-dappled paths, the distant chime of a lecture hall bell, but for Amir Tyson, that rhythm fractures into a jagged edge as the white frat boys ramp up their cruelty, their taunts sharpening into a relentless blade that cuts deeper with every passing day. It starts in the hallways, a narrow corridor lined with lockers where the buzz-cut lanky one sticks out a foot as Amir hurries to class, his sneakers catching the tripwire, sending him sprawling to the tile with a thud that echoes off the walls, his books scatter, his pencils roll underfoot, and the frat boys laugh, high and cruel, rings out as he steps over Amir, "Watch where you're going, loser." Drawing smirks from the others who linger nearby, their eyes glinting with a thrill that feeds off his stumble. The next day, it's worse. Near the quad stone fountain, the broad-shouldered leader snatches Amir's backpack from his shoulder, ripping it open with a grin as Amir reaches to stop him, his voice a soft plea, "Give it back." But the kid just laughs, appending the bag into the water, textbook sinking with a splash, pencils bobbing on the surface, his buddies cheering as they shove Amir back. "Looks better wet, don't it?" Their voice is a chorus of mockery that drowns out the chatter of passing students, some who pause to gawk, others who hurry away, heads down. By week's end, they escalate again, cornering Amir behind the library, their phones out as the lanky one shoves him against the brick wall, the leader sneering, "Smile for the camera, hood rat." And they record it all, Amir's flinch as a fist grazes his arm, the racial slurs they hurl like stones, "You don't belong here, go crawl back." His hoodie yanked over his face, their laughter swelling as he staggers free, bruised and silent, the video hitting social media within hours, racking up likes and jeering comments that spread like wildfire across the campus network. That night, Amir shuffles through the front door of their home, his jacket streaked with dirt, a faint purple bloom under his eye where a shove turns sharp. He drops his soaked backpack by the stairs, its straps dripping onto the hardwood, and slumps into the kitchen chair, his gaze fixed on the table, his hands folded tight to hide their trembling. Mike's there in an instant, his shadow falling across the room, his voice gentle but thick with worry. "What happened, champ?" "You look like hell," his eyes tracing the bruise, the mud, the way Amir's shoulders cave inward like a building about to collapse, but Amir just shakes his head, his voice a whisper, "It's nothing, Dad," though the crack in it betrays him, a fault line Mike can't ignore. The air grows heavy, the hum of the fridge a faint drone beneath the silence, and Mike kneels beside him, his massive hand resting on Amir's arm. "Don't lie to me, son, I see it, I feel it, something's tearing you up," his tone firm now, insistent, a father's plea wrapped in steel. Amir's eyes flicker, a storm brewing behind them, and he pulls away. "Just leave it, okay?" But Mike presses, his voice dropping lower, "I ain't leaving nothing when you're coming home like this, talk to me," and the words hang there, a lifeline Amir hesitates to grab until his resolve crumbles, his head bowing as he mutters. "They won't stop, Dad, they hate me, they won't let up," his admission spilling out like water through a broken dam, raw and ragged, his breath hitching as he buries his face in his hands. Mike's worry peaks, a tidal wave crashing through him, his son, his quiet, brilliant boy, battered by the same hate he'd fought as a kid, the same fists and words he'd sworn Amir would never face, his fists clench, his jaw locks, a fury rising cold and clear as he stands, his shadow stretching long across the floor. He lays a hand on Amir's shoulder, his grip steady, his voice a vow carved from stone. They don't get to do this, not to you, not anymore, I'm handling it, and Amir looks up, his eyes wet but searching, a flicker of trust breaking through the shame. The kitchen clock ticks on, each second a hammer blow to Mike's resolve, and a voice threads through the stillness. The bullies thought they'd won, thought they'd broken Amir for good, but they were tightening a noose around their own necks, and Mike Tyson was ready to pull it taut. Mike Tyson stands in his kitchen, the linoleum cool under his bare feet, the air thick with the scent of coffee gone cold on the counter, when the phone rings, a shrill cut through the late afternoon quiet that jolts him from scrubbing a pan in the sink. He wipes his hands on a dish towel, his brow furrowing as he lifts the receiver, the school counselor's voice crackling through, clipped and cautious, Mr. Tyson. There was an incident with Amir today, a fight, he's not hurt bad, but we need you to come in. The word fight lands like a punch, his grip tightening on the phone, his mind racing. Amir doesn't fight, doesn't throw fists, not like he did, and the counselor's vague, not hurt bad, twists a knot in his gut, a father's dread flaring as he mutters, I'm on my way, and hangs up, the receiver clattering back into place. He grabs his keys, strides to Amir's room, and pushes the door open. There's his son, curled on the bed, his hoodie pulled tight around him, his face buried in a pillow that muffles soft, ragged sobs, tears Mike hasn't seen since Amir was a kid, a sight that stops him cold, his chest tightening as he kneels beside the bed. Hey, champ, what happened? His voice gentle but urgent, his hand hovering over Amir's shoulder. Amir flinches, wiping his eyes with a sleeve, his voice a broken whisper, they called it a fight, Dad, but it wasn't, I didn't do anything, they wouldn't stop, and the words spill out, jagged and raw, painting a picture of torment that ignites a fury in Mike, a slow burn that surges into a blaze. He's heard enough, seen enough, felt enough through Amir's silence these past weeks, and now this, a call from school, tears on his son's face, it's a line crossed he can't unsee. He stands, his shadow swallowing the room, stay here, I'm fixing this, his tone a steel promise as he grabs his jacket, the fabric rustling as he pulls it on, his boots pounding the hardwood as he heads for the truck, the keys jangling in his fist. The drive to campus is a blur, the engines growl a match for the storm in his chest, his hands white-knuckled on the wheel as he weaves through traffic, the college gates looming ahead under a sky turning gray with dusk. He parks crooked near the quad, his boots hitting the pavement with a thud, his eyes scanning the sprawl of lawns and paths until he hears it, laughter, sharp and cruel, cutting through the evening hum, drawing him toward a cluster of trees near a drainage ditch. There they are, the frat boys, 5 of them in their crisp polos and sneers, circled around Amir like wolves. The leader, broad and blonde, shoves him hard, sending him stumbling into the muddy ditch, his sneakers slipping, his hands clawing at the wet earth as his backpack tumbles after him, the others jeering, stay down, trash. Their voices a venomous chant laced with slurs, their phones out, filming as Amir struggles to stand, mud streaking his jeans, his face a mask of shame and exhaustion. Mike's restraint snaps like a taut wire, his breath hitching as he closes the distance, his boots crunching gravel, his presence swelling into the scene like a thunderclap. The crowd of onlookers parts, their gasps a faint echo as he steps into the circle, his voice booming, enough. A roar that shakes the air, halting the frat boys mid-laugh, their heads snapping toward him, their smirks freezing as they register the mountain of a man bearing down on them. Amir looks up, his eyes wide through the dirt smearing his face, a flicker of relief breaking through his despair, while the leader stutters, who the hell, but Mike cuts him off, his shadow swallowing them whole, his fists clenched, his gaze a furnace of rage and resolve. No more watching, no more waiting, they've pushed his son too far, and this breaking point cracks open a father's wrath they can't outrun. Across the quad, the wind picks up, rustling the leaves overhead, and a voice threads through the chaos. They crossed a line no father could forgive, and Mike Tyson was done waiting, ready to show them what happens when you break a champion's son. Here's the 1 hour and 5 minutes to 1 hour and 20 minutes, The Fight Back, Section 4, Shadows of a Champion. Mike Tyson defends his son from college bullies, written as one long, engaging paragraph with professional polish. It follows your sequence. Mike pulls Amir up from the ditch, then faces the bullies, disarming the leader's cocky swing with a steel grip, pinning him while lecturing them on respect, and forcing apologies recorded by bystanders, ensuring their humiliation spreads. The narration emphasizes Mike's strategic power, delivering a tense, crowd-pleasing lesson that keeps readers hooked with visceral action and emotional payoff. The dust settles over the college quad, a gray veil softening the edges of the trees as Mike Tyson stands in the muddy ditch, his boots sinking into the wet earth, his massive hands reaching down to grip Amir's arm, pulling his son up with a strength that's gentle yet unyielding, the boy's mud-streaked hoodie clinging to his frame as he steadies himself, his breath ragged but his eyes lifting to meet his father's with a flicker of trust breaking through the shame. The frat boys, 5 white kids in their polos and sneers, stand frozen for a heartbeat, their laughter choked off by Mike's roared, "Enough," still ringing in the air, their phones dangling mid-record as the crowd of onlookers presses closer, a murmur rippling through them like wind through grass. Mike steps out of the ditch, his shadow stretching long across the pavement, his jacket streaked with dirt, his presence a wall of fury and calm as he turns to face the bullies, their leader, broad-shouldered and blonde, shaking off his shock with a cocky grin. "You're gonna regret this, old man," his voice a taunt as he swings a lazy fist toward Mike's chest, a move born of bravado and booze, but Mike's faster, his hand snapping up like a steel trap, catching the kid's wrist mid-air with a grip that twists his arm back, pinning it behind him in one fluid motion, the crack of joints popping loud enough to hush the crowd. The leader yelps, his grin collapsing into a grimace, his knees buckling as Mike holds him there, his voice low and steady, a growl that cuts through the evening chill. "You don't touch my son, you don't touch anyone, and think you walk away clean," each word a hammer blow, his free hand jabbing a finger at the others, who shuffle back, their smirks fading, their eyes darting for an exit they won't find. The lanky one with the buzzcut stammers, "We were just messing around." But Mike's gaze locks onto him, dark and unyielding. "Messing around don't leave bruises, don't make a kid cry, y'all crossed into something else, and now you learn," his tone a lesson carved in stone, his grip tightening just enough to make the leader squirm, a bead of sweat rolling down the kid's flushed face. The stocky one in the back clutches his phone, his hands trembling as he tries to slip it into his pocket, but Mike catches it. "Keep rolling, tough guy, let's make this a show," and he nods to the bystanders, their devices already out, red lights blinking as they capture every second, Mike towering over the pinned leader, his voice rising now. "You think it's funny, huh? Picking on someone who won't swing back? Say you're sorry, say it loud," his command a whip crack that snaps through the air. The leader resists, his jaw clenching, but Mike twists his arm a fraction more, pain flashing in his eyes, and he chokes out, "I'm sorry." The words forced, brittle, echoed by the others as Mike glares them down one by one. "Sorry, man, we didn't mean it," their voices overlapping in a reluctant chorus, their faces burning with a humiliation they can't escape, the crowd's whispers swelling into a hum of disbelief and approval. Mike releases the leader, shoving him back into his pack, the kids stumbling into the lanky one, their bravado shredded as they huddle together, eyes wide, phones still filming their downfall. He steps back to Amir, resting a hand on his shoulder, his voice softening. "You're worth more than their hate, champ, don't ever forget it," and Amir nods, his chin lifting, a spark rekindling in his gaze. The bystanders close in, their recording spreading the scene, Mike's lesson, the apologies, the bullies' collapse, a viral reckoning already taking root, and a voice threads through the fading light. Mike didn't just stop them, he made sure they'd never forget, turning their cruelty into a mirror they couldn't unsee. The college quad lies hushed under the weight of dusk, the air still tingling from Mike Tyson's confrontation as the crowd disperses, their phones buzzing with the raw footage of the frat boys' forced apologies, clips of the broad-shouldered leaders choked, "I'm sorry," the lanky ones stammered regret, their faces flushed and crumbling under Mike's unyielding grip, now ricocheting across social media like a wildfire sparked in dry brush. By morning, the videos explode, hashtags blooming like wounds, hashtag Tyson takedown, hashtag frat fall, each view a nail in the coffin of the bullies' smug reign, the campus server crashing under the flood of shares, retweets, and comments from students who'd watched in silence too long, their outrage now a roaring tide. They've been doing this for years. About time someone stopped them. The clips racking up thousands, then millions of views, a digital gavel slamming down on their arrogance. Mike stands in his kitchen, a mug of tea steaming in his hands, his broad frame silhouetted against the window as he watches Amir scroll through his phone, the boy's eyes widening at the flood of support, his bruised cheek a fading shadow under the glow of the screen. Outside, the world shifts, the college dean's office lights burn late, a terse email hitting inboxes by noon, announcing the suspension of all 5 frat boys pending a full investigation, their names stark against the formal letterhead, their scholarships yanked, their futures teetering on the edge of ruin. Parents descend on campus within hours, the leader's father, a paunchy man in a wrinkled suit, storming into the admin building, his voice booming through closed doors, "This is a disgrace. My son's no criminal." But the dean holds firm, the viral evidence a wall he can't breach, his wife trailing behind, her face buried in her hands, shame curling her shoulders as whispers follow them out. The police arrive next, squad cars rolling up under flashing lights, officers knocking on dorm doors with questions about past antics, reports of smashed windows, keyed cars, late-night harassments the frat had laughed off, now stacking into a case that promises more than a slap on the wrist. The lanky one sits on a curb, head in his hands, muttering, "We didn't think it'd blow up like this," while the stocky one paces, his phone dead in his pocket, his bravado bled dry. The frat house, a squat brick building with peeling letters, stands quiet, its windows dark, its parties silenced, the brothers scattering like rats from a sinking ship, their reign over the campus dissolving into a memory no one dares defend. Mike watches it unfold from home, his boots planted on the porch, his arms crossed as he scans the horizon, the weight of his stand settling into a quiet pride. Amir steps beside him, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his chin higher than it's been in weeks, a faint smile tugging at his lips as he says, "Thanks, Dad, they're gone," and Mike nods, his hand resting on his son's back. "They had it coming, champ. Nobody messes with us," and walks away clean. The evening air carries the hum of crickets, a campus flyer flapping loose on a nearby pole, and a voice cuts through the stillness. "They fucked around with a Tyson, and found out what happens next, their empire of hate toppled by a father's fury and a son's resilience." The college campus wakes to a quieter dawn, the air crisp with the scent of dew on grass, the echoes of the frat boys' downfall fading into a hum of renewal as Amir Tyson steps through the quad, his sneakers steady on the pavement, his backpack slung over one shoulder, no longer a shield but a tool for the dreams he's reclaiming. The bruise on his cheek has softened to a faint shadow, his eyes bright with a spark that's been buried too long. He moves with a new ease, his shoulders squared, his chin lifted as he heads to the engineering building, his notebook tucked under his arm, pages filled with sketches of bridges and circuits that flow freer now, unburdened by the weight of fear. His grades climb, his professors nod with quiet respect, his voice rises in class, steady and sure, a boy who's found his footing again. At home, the garage hums with life, the heavy bag swaying as Mike laces up Amir's gloves, their laughter bouncing off the concrete walls, sharp jabs and hooks fly, sweat beads on their brows. Mike's gruff, "Keep your guard up, champ," met with Amir's grin, like this, Dad. A rhythm of trust and strength weaving between them, the sparring a dance that heals what words can't touch. The TV stays off now, replaced by late-night talks over pizza, Amir sketching while Mike recounts old ring stories, their bond a fortress rebuilt from the rubble of pain. Beyond their doorstep, the campus shifts, students gather in the quad, flyers pinned to boards with bold letters, no more bullies, their voices rising in meetings, their phones swapped for petitions, a tide of change sparked by the viral stand of a father who wouldn't bend. The frat house sits empty, its windows boarded, its shadow lifted, replaced by a mural on the library wall, silhouettes of hands raised in solidarity, a quiet tribute to the day Mike stepped in. Mike watches it all from his porch, his boots planted firm, his massive frame softened by the evening light as Amir joins him, a soda in hand, his smile easy now. They're scared to even look at me, Dad, feels good, and Mike chuckles, deep and warm, damn right, son, nobody's touching you again, his hand clapping Amir's shoulder, a weight of pride settling there, unshakable. The neighborhood hums around them, kids biking past, a dog barking down the street, and Amir leans into the moment, his voice soft, I didn't think I'd get through it, but you showed me, and Mike nods, his eyes tracing the horizon, you're tougher than you know, champ, I just reminded them who you come from. The sky stretches wide above, a canvas of gold and purple, the porch swing creaking faintly as they sit together, father and son, their laughter mingling with the breeze, a bond forged anew, stronger, fiercer, a legacy of resilience that no hate could break. Across the quiet, a voice rises, Mike turned pain into power, for his son, and for every kid pushed too far, proving that even in the darkest shadows, a champion's heart can light the way. The Tyson home settles into a quiet evening, the porch light casting a warm glow over Mike and Amir as they sit side by side, the swing creaking under their weight, a half-empty pizza box resting on the steps below, the air soft with the hum of crickets and the distant laughter of neighborhood kids chasing fireflies across the lawns. Mike's massive hand rests on the armrest, his gaze steady on the horizon, a faint smile tugging at his lips as Amir flips through his phone, reading messages from classmates who've rallied behind him, texts of thanks, of awe, of a campus waking up to its own strength, and the weight of their victory hangs between them, a triumph carved from pain, a lesson etched in the dirt of that ditch. The world beyond their porch buzzes with the echo of their stand, the viral videos still rippling through screens, the frat boys' downfall a story whispered in dorms and diners, but here, it's just father and son, the quiet heroes of a fight that's bigger than them, a fight that touches every kid who's ducked a shove, every parent who's felt that helpless rage, every soul who stood up when the odds leaned hard against them. A voice breaks through the stillness, warm and resonant, pulling the thread from their story to yours, ever faced bullies, on a playground, in a classroom, at work. Drop your story in the comments below, your fight could lift someone up, could spark the courage they need to push back, just like Amir found his through Mike. The night deepens, the stars pricking through the sky, and the voice presses on, if Mike's stand moved you, if his fire lit something in you, hit that like button, let us know this hit home, subscribe if you're in for more real stories of grit and payback, and smack that bell so you don't miss a single one, because we're not done yet. A tease slips in, sharp and enticing, next time, a worker takes on a corrupt boss, tearing down a rigged game from the inside, stay tuned, because when the little guy swings back, the whole world shakes. Mike leans back, his arm draping over Amir's shoulder, the boys laugh a soft echo as he reads another message, their bond a lighthouse in the dark, a beacon for anyone who's been knocked down and dared to rise.